So this is kind of like a follow-up to my previous video. If you guys haven't seen that one, it's about where I tell my story how I dropped out of school. Then you should check that one out first. But moving forward, this is the after. What happens after you dropped out of school? And I'm not gonna talk about everything, but the main thing I'm gonna focus on is what life was like and how it feels. So the first thing is naturally I felt very, very relieved. It was one of the best feelings ever. But how do you stay afloat? How do you not let it get to you? The fact that you don't have another backup option. There's no paper saying that you're qualified with some kind of knowledge. So we all heard of the phrase, burn your bridges, or there's no plan B, only plan A. Does it actually give you superpowers? Well, here's my experience. I'm not gonna blue ball you guys the entire video. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Yes, when you have less options, you are more focused. But it's not because it's gonna give you some kind of superpowers or you're magically gonna be better at everything you do. That's not how this works. And here's why. So first things first, removing other options let me focus a lot more on one thing. And chances are, if you focus on one thing instead of 10 other things, you're gonna be a lot more successful. Because for me at the time, I was working my construction job, I was also doing sales, and I would end up doing school at night. So that left me with like 4 hours of sleep. You cannot continue that, it's not sustainable. I know what it's like, I did it for a while, and I was also trying to go to the gym at the time as well. But nonetheless, removing that has made my quality of life much better. What that means is I just got my sleep. I didn't have to come home after work or after gym and then worry about also doing some homework or some test that's coming up. And this way, when you're actually learning something, maybe you're learning a skill, I was learning how to talk to people. How do I have a conversation? How do I persuade someone? How do I sell? This was just my experience. And naturally, you can't be doing that all day. You need to give yourself some rest, which is at least an evening or at night. This way your brain and your subconscious actually digests everything, sorts it out, lines it up, and the next day you feel a bit more confident that you know what you're talking about. So from that point of view, yes, removing other distractions, and school was a distraction for me at the time, that was a win. But the more interesting thing that I want to talk about is what happens to your baseline. I mean, you know when you're going through a rut, you drop through these levels? Imagine there are like these bars and you're going through a tough time, whatever's going on in your life. Maybe your girlfriend dumped you, maybe your parents are going through a divorce, maybe you got evicted, I don't know. But let's say you're going through a rut and there are these steps or levels that you keep on falling to. And with each step, you're going back to your previous self, meaning you bring back an old habit. Maybe you start smoking again and you were actually clean from it. Maybe you go back to drinking. I know these days it's very common where people go back to smoking a lot of weed. They become stoners every single day. And maybe that's you right now. But my point here is, how far do you go down? What's the lowest level you can go? Each person has a different threshold. What events need to happen in life before they drop down a level? And it's gonna happen. These seasons come and go. You're gonna have winning seasons, you're gonna have losing seasons. One thing that I noticed when I was going through one of these dips is because I had no backup option, I know I'm too deep. There's no way I'm going back to school. That would never work for me. I'm not gonna get that paper, and I'm not gonna go and find a job with a paper. So there was a new threshold that I could not fall below, because no matter how bad things got, or how difficult they got, there was this one new thing on my mind. It's the fact that I just have to do it. If I don't do this, I am screwed. Like, I am absolutely, royally screwed if I don't make this work. You see what I'm saying? It's like you have a new mental barrier that prevents you from going down more. And this is very powerful. If you're someone who is very comfortable, it's very unlikely that you're going to push hard enough to get to a new level, because you first have to become uncomfortable, do that for a while, and then you'll become comfortable at the new level. And there are a lot of these kind of thresholds that I actually encountered through my sales time. For example, there were guys that I worked with, and some of them they didn't have expenses. So they were basically kids. They were just fresh out of high school. And they never had the same drive as the person who had a family and who had rent to pay. There were people who said, I have to make a certain amount of sales, otherwise my family doesn't eat, or I can't pay rent. While, for example, kids, they'd just be like, whatever, I'm not showing up tomorrow. I don't care. Because they don't have that reason to come in even when they don't feel like it, because nothing's gonna happen. But in the specific scenario that I'm explaining is there's always gonna be this thing in the back of your mind that tells you you're screwed if you don't do this. I heard that every time I reached it. There were weeks where I made $0 paychecks. There were times where it was just not good for sales, where I couldn't pull through, especially winters. You guys know that winter months, especially in colder countries, where businesses experience a much lower sales volume, especially after the holiday season. So every time I would reach that point, that's exactly what I would hear. And because of that, that allowed me to survive long enough to where I ended up going higher and getting promoted to different positions. It's not because I was exceptional or anything. That was not the case. Sometimes the game is to just last longer than others. How long can you last before you have to resort back to your comfort? That was the difference between some people that made it to a higher level and some people that stayed the same or actually went backwards. Now, one thing that I would watch out for is if you are trying to burn some kind of bridge, maybe it's a relationship you want to leave and you think that's going to help you find the right person for you down the line, and you think your current person is not good for you, or maybe it's your job, maybe it's your school. If you are considering burning some sort of bridge, hopefully not for real, metaphorically speaking, then you need to understand, did you isolate that this is the exact problem that's causing you to stay comfortable? Because you don't want to end up in a situation where you burn that bridge, but your life stays the same. Because turns out, there's something else backing you that's keeping you comfortable. For example, if you're a person who doesn't have any expenses to pay, maybe you're living with your parents and you don't even help them out with the bill, nothing. Then if you drop out of school, maybe at first you'll be a little bit motivated, like, yeah, I'm gonna make it now. I'm gonna be one of those people who can say in the future that, yeah, I quit school and I became successful. That's a great scenario to imagine. But when shit hits the fan, when things get bad enough, or when things get very, very difficult, where it's make or break, you know the fact that you still live with your parents and you have no money to pay for anything. So you'll be okay and taken care of. In that scenario, you burnt the wrong bridge. That's not going to help you. Make sure you found the actual thing that's stopping you from moving forward and keeping you comfortable. Some people, it's about moving out. Others have to acquire expenses. Maybe in some cases, you just have to buy a car or rent or increase your bill just so that you have a motive to go to work. Because otherwise, you're just not going to work. Each person's different and your motivations are different. So you have to understand what's going to motivate you and what's going to keep you comfortable. And based on that, you decide what are you going to cut off and what's the new thing you're going to bring into your life. Hopefully this made sense, guys. If you feel like it, you can follow me. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.